I'm doing good. How are you?
Doing really well.
Nice.
So today we have Ron Yacovetti and Lourdes Gonzalez joining us. They are in the process of making their way in here. So while we are waiting for them, how's your week been?
Super busy, but it has been really, really good. How about yours?
Really good. I've been pretty busy myself going into work over at Pentagram and then
Yep.
working on my book. So
Yeah,
it's
that's exciting.
been pretty crazy. Yeah. I
That's super
just
cool.
got the outline editing finished and the forward for the book done. So that's good.
That's awesome. Do
Yeah.
you have a? Well, no, I won't even ask because it'd be too much of a spoiler, so I'll leave that alone. But how was the weather down in Mass today? I hear it was kind of rainy-ish, but then it cleared up a little bit.
Actually, it was pretty nice today. It was nice to be outside for a while and then I came back in and relaxed and worked on some things. So, how
Yeah.
was the weather up there?
Like I said, a little rainy for most of it. I mean, it rained at like 4 p.m., but it was just kind of a sprinkly. I actually got some disc golf playing in today, which was fun.
Oh,
I always love,
cool.
yeah, I always love doing that. So, but yeah, and the weather was really, really nice, temperature wise.
Hmm.
It remained in the 50s. I think you can see how old I am because I'm like, as I'm looking at the temperature, it's still in the 50s, I think, up here. So, in Maine, being in the 50s in April, that's not bad.
That's not bad at all. I
But while
think
we're
that,
waiting, I have a paranormal question for you.
of course.
So, there's people talk about the veil, right?
Yeah.
Do you think that it is thin or thicker in different parts of this of the year, or do you think it even exists at all?
I think there is a veil that exists.
Okay.
As far as to whether it is thin or thick, I think it depends on the individual and how they see it. But I will say that for me, it's not like a curtain that just goes up. 80s in Florida. Oh my gosh, I'm jealous.
Definitely rubbing it in, Thomas. But I'm happy that if that's where you are, that I'm keep it up. That's good. Good weather to have.
Yeah. For me, when I am communicating with the other side, I'm going through the veil and looking for who I'm looking to connect with.
Sure.
Or if it is a situation where um the energy just comes through, then it's like it can feel light energetically. And it's not like a physical veil, like a curtain. It's more like an
Right.
energetic veil that ends up occurring. And I do think that that is put in place to you protect things a little bit. So, what are your thoughts on it?
I might have a contradictory answer or feeling or thought. I don't
That's
know.
okay.
I kind of don't even think it exists really.
Mm-hmm.
Just only because if that was the case, if it was thick or thin, or whatever, I feel like spirit communication in those times that it was thick would be difficult, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe like or comparable to, I mean, like people say October the veil is thin, right? Well,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you and I both do readings year round,
We do.
right? So I'll ask you, do you ever find that there's a certain month where you're like, it's
No.
May, it's a bitch, I can't connect, That's
No,
kind of
I
why I
don't
feel that
really
way.
have that
That's the
issue.
only thing I can think of as to why I feel that way. And again, it could be contradictory, and it could be people don't agree, and that's all right. But
Well, I think maybe the veil, the term the veil could be a reference to what is seen and unseen,
that's a
because
great way to
it
put it. I didn't
may
even think of that.
be it may be that there are certain periods of time where those whom normally do not see things have a little bit more of a capacity to do so. So I think that's more of a reference frame of mind when it comes to being able to connect with them
Yeah. Hmm.
at all,
Yeah.
maybe. as a
I think
thought.
it could also be that people manifest this thinness, especially in like the October spooky season, that sort of thing. Everyone maybe puts that energy out there, so therefore they feel like they're manifesting that feeling of it being thin, for lack of a better phrase, that and that allows it to be that for them. Like I said, if it's an
It's
individual thing, I mean, there's a lot of people that share that viewpoint.
Yeah, I would say that it definitely creates a magic that opens up a gateway a little bit more depending on the individual. Like, so
Mm,
if somebody believes that the veil is most thin to where you can see, see those things that are on the other side, then that creates that magic for that individual. But as a collective, when it comes to people like us who talk to the dead all the time or have a good communication with them, it, it's a little bit of a different context. And then also I think it also has to do with specific walks and traditions and what their belief systems are. So
mm,
whereas our belief system may fall under a different alignment, it's definitely one of those things where that yes, to answer your question, yes, I do think yes.
well, it's interesting too, because I'm starting to, as you're talking, you're kind of making me realize certain things as well. And I had mentioned about fall being when the veil is thin, right? Maybe that's
Mhm,
because everything is kind of transitioning into that spirit realm. Everything, plants are dying as the weather gets colder.
mhm.
That aspect of the afterlife is more heightened
Yes, it
because
is.
things are transitioning in that way. And maybe that's what it is.
I think so. It also falls into alignment of certain, so the Sabbats of the wheel of
Yeah,
time, the wheel of the year.
yeah,
So when different seasons come into place, it definitely falls into those specific traditional things, like in certain belief systems within the metaphysical world. Fall is when, yeah, it's when things start dying, and it would
sure.
be a time where you would honor certain things for some people.
That's cool. All right, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Curious,
yeah. I haven't seen anything about Ron and Lourdes yet. Have you?
I have not. Although, oh,
I'm still communicating with them. For some reason, they're having issues, and I told them they could just use their phone. So I'm hoping soon. I not sure
No
what's going
worries.
on, guys. So
No
I'll let
worries.
you know. I will know.
no worries.
I'm sorry.
Hey, we'll just wing it in the
We'll
meantime.
Yeah, we'll talk
And
paranormal, we'll talk metaphysics, well talk mediumship. It's all good.
You guys
yeah,
are awesome. All right, I'll let you know.
Sounds
okay.
good.
Awesome. Speaking of which, have you ever heard Ron and Lourdes' system and how they use it?
Yes, I have. I think I first heard it at the Augusta Civic Center, at the main
Mm-hmm.
paranormal and horror convention at the Civic Center. They had a room there, and I walked in and I sat down and I was checking it out actually, and I've also seen it at Wilson Castle as well. Um, I was hanging out with them for an event that was there, and they had their whole setup, which was really really cool. Um, I've heard recordings of some of the stuff that they've captured and some of the stories that they've said. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
wild. Like literally, one spirit came through and actually said Ron's last name, which
Mm-hmm.
he jokingly said, "I can barely pronounce my last name," and for a spirit to come through and pronounce it like verbatim, that's pretty impressive. I mean,
Yeah.
it's really really cool. It's a cool system. I'm anxious to ask him more about that.
Well, and the fact that all the white noise is taken out of it, and it's so clear to hear what is coming through the system. I can't wait to ask them questions as well. The
So I'm
first
assuming you've heard it,
time
right?
Oh, yes. The
Yeah.
first time that I heard it was when it was Massachusetts. It was one of the ones that Sam Baltrusis put on.
Oh yeah. Yep.
One of his events that he had put on that I went to. And they did like a seance experience, which was really cool.
Nice.
So I got to hear a couple different things, and I just think it's so cool what they've created. I can't wait for it to be hopefully available at some point down the line in the future for
I know,
people
right?
to use. Yeah.
Yep.
I know
I'm
it's
sure.
something that's a long work in process for them,
Yeah, yeah,
because there's a lot of components to it. But
yeah.
yeah.
But still, like, now they created that, right? That was
Yes.
their design and their creation.
Yes, I am pretty sure.
I think,
Don't
yeah,
quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that they created it. Yeah.
that's very. I mean, that's cool. That's cool, and I like that. Like, there's nothing else like that. You know what I mean? I haven't seen anything like,
Mhm.
especially the big setup that they have, where it's like, I mean, it's impressive. It's cool.
Yeah. I believe one of them has even had a parent come through the system to talk
Oh
to
man,
them.
that's
And
incredible.
it's pretty awesome. I think it's Lourdes that has had a parent that's come through.
That is very
So
cool.
I think that's pretty awesome. So
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable. I think that would definitely. I don't know. I would be pretty shocked if that. I mean, obviously, I believe in spirit communication. I believe in things like that work, but it's so rare that like things like that come through for me in any sort of capacity.
mhm.
Do you ever find that people that you know in spirit come through either in paranormal style in
Mhm.
styles, like say maybe it's with a REM pod or like a spirit box or things like that? Like, have you had personal experiences where people have come through in that fashion?
Yeah, actually I have.
Okay.
I have had my grandmother come through
Excuse me, sorry.
the come through necrophonics,
Oh wow, no
the
kidding.
system. I have had my friend Scott, who passed away, come through it, and my friend Jonathan come through a system. Hi, Blaine. It's good to see you.
Hey, Blaine.
I have also had the connections that I have had that have passed away, like touch my REM pod. It's usually something that they come through that's attuned specifically to me. So,
Yep.
for example, my phone with the necrophonics, like it'll come through my phone. Have I heard it on other people's systems? Yes, but it's not as often as I hear it through
Oh, no kidding.
necessarily what's attuned to me.
Huh. That's cool.
Yeah.
Another
Yeah.
paranormal question for you, and I'm really interested in your opinion on this one.
Sure.
Obviously you have done clearings for locations, right?
Yes.
So this is an interesting question. I'm really curious about this.
Hmm.
Um, have you ever run into a situation where you've done a clearing and the spirit that you cleared out comes back, but without any provocation, right? Nobody, called it back. Nobody gave it any sort of reason to, but it was like, nope, I'm not, I'm back here. You know what I mean?
I have heard of this happening before. When I have done house clearings, I have not personally experienced it to where I have heard that that energy has come back.
Mhm.
However, with the experiences that I have heard of before, I have been told that part of it could have been the way that it was the space was cleared specifically, or it could be that the tradition that they were using
Oh,
was not in alignment with what would naturally actually take care of that specific situation.
that's interesting. Okay, yeah, that's cool.
So, like, for example, if you're going to a place where traditionally they are Catholic and they're not pagan, right?
And you do a paganistic ritual, then it's probably not going to clear out, right?
It's probably not what you're probably going to want to do is find connections that can go into an alignment,
Ah,
where
hmm.
where like a somebody from the Catholic Church comes in at that point, because that is the belief system. Also, you have to look at what's actually haunting or out of location. Is it a ghost? Is it connected to trauma? Is it something that actually is demonic? What
Sure.
what type of demonic energy is this specific energy? And are the people that are going in there knowledgeable enough to know how to clear that energy out?
That's fair too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good
Yeah.
answer.
What about for you? Have you ever had that experience?
So I very rarely have done house clearings, and when I have done them, um, I haven't had anybody reach out to me and say, "Hey, they're back." Although there was one instance where a woman did say that she was experiencing negativity in her home, but honestly, like I think that she was asking for it to come back. Like it just she gave it too much attention, and I think that opened up a door in a way.
Now we can
You know what I
hear.
mean? Oh, there they are.
Yay! Hi.
Hi, can you hear us?
You hear us all
We
right?
can hear you.
Yes, we
I
can.
tell you to go on because
Can you hear us?
Yeah, we can now. We were having sound problems for some reason. Our speaker would not play any sound from StreamYard, but everything else worked.
Oh, weird. Okay, no
Oh, how
worries.
strange. Well, it's wonderful to have you both here. Thank you so much for being willing to take the time to come and spend some time with us.
Yeah.
Well,
Thank you for having us.
More than willing and happy to do it. We were disappointed. We looked like we weren't going to be able to do it for a minute.
Well,
Well, it all
we're
worked
glad
out.
you're here.
All right.
It's the sound system gremlins. It's okay.
The sound gremlins. Yeah. For a while, I was trying to use my iPhone for the podcast because I was like, oh, it's got a way better camera than my laptop, which I'm using now. But I was having the same issues. I joined StreamYard, and I like Raven would be talking, and I'm like, fuck, I can't hear anything. So I have to bounce back and come back in. So yeah, but we're glad it all worked out.
Yep, us too.
Yeah. Seems to be fine now. It was really weird.
For our viewers that are newer to the paranormal that have never met you, can you tell a little bit about what you do and what you offer in the paranormal world?
I'm gonna leave it to you. Go ahead.
All right. Feels almost hypocritical to be talking about something technical, though. We just had a rudimentary speaker issue to get in. But Thomas Patrick. He's awesome. So we do what is called the Digital Séance Experience. It is an ITC or instrumental trance communication methodology that we started working on before it was called such back in 2019 when we resurrected a precursor to spirit boxes or ghost boxes or the Frank's box. I think a lot of people think that ITC or radio communication stuff started with Frank Sumption and the Frank's box. It did not. Started primarily in Europe, and I don't know how much of it was done here, but with something called direct radio voice, when they just used a vacant short or medium wave frequency on a world band radio, no sweeping, no broadcast emissions, just barren. And it was phenomenal what I saw them getting. And at the time, for at least 20 years or more, anybody who was doing anything predominantly cutting edge in the paranormal was doing for ITC was building boxes. And that's not my bag, man, as my father's friend say, his old jazz musician friend. That's not my bag. Yeah. So I'm not building and welding stuff. So I wanted to find a way to get more involved in this, and I kept looking for other stuff that was out there. I came across Dr. Annabella Cordoso, who is the last surviving of the EVP or ITC pioneers. And when I say pioneers, I don't mean the people on TV shows who played their role. I'm talking about the people who first started doing this as a serious type of research. She's the last one left. She mentored me into direct radio voice. I still talk to her to this day. From there, we were working on just we had a big world band radio, a big boombox on a long wave channel. That was it. And then we came across and came in contact with another very brilliant ITC person named Keith Clark out of Florida from Paranormal.com. He introduced us to the software that will filter in real time. And so we played with it. I wasn't sure. I abandoned it and went back to the purist radio. Then was like, oh, well, there's something to this. So we revisited it. And essentially what that part of it does, and I like to explain this because when people see computers or anything like that involved, they automatically think app. It's not an app. What the method starts with analog white noise generators, multiple. They go into an interface that fuses all of those equal amplitude, every frequency a human can hear, 20 hertz to 20,000 of white noise, into an interface that pipes it through one channel through the software. What the software is doing is everything people do with audio and the paranormal when they get home.
Oh.
It's denoising it, dropping the noise floor, amplifying a little bit, and slowing down. But it's doing it in real time, because if per the methodology we're looking to have contact or dialogue at the moment at a location, whichever, the more discernible it is, the more likely that happens. And when you go home, you're listening to what was said, but you no longer interact with it. So that's what the goal of this was to do the real-time filtration. And what Keith gave us, we took, and then I spent the better part of 3 or so years trying every which way, counterintuitive, counterproductive, whatever it was, to try to drop the noise floor, make it so that resonant voices were the only thing that really jumped out. And we're at a point now when it runs pretty damn quiet. And the white noise, I don't know if you want to explain to people know the difference between the ghost box and the white noise we're using.
Well, with as many of you know, with the ghost boxes, you know that it sweeps through radio stations. This is just set at white noise. There is no radio. There's no word banks. There's no white noise, and there's no data in white noise. So it's just pure white noise.
Yep.
Right. So there's no word bank, sound banks. There's no RF signal. There's no microphone input into the system.
Mhm.
It's completely closed from a physics of sound perspective. So nothing should be in there words wise at all. And even when there's variances that sound like the cadence of speech or sound like clear words, which multiple people in a room will hear, that for all intents and purposes does not have any business being there, but it is what the system does. So that's the essence of how it works. And when we bring it out to hopefully give people moments where they connect with who they hope to connect with. We can't influence it. It's not like, and this is the differentiation, the app stuff compared to this. There's no microphone that hears you. If you can say what you want to hear and it doesn't make it come through the system, there's no input for it. And there are no sounds or word banks, obviously, either. So anything audible, anything clear and intelligible that sounds like language we know is by definition for how this works anomalous. It should not.
That's pretty far out. I mean, when you first developed this, and all of a sudden you had things coming through that, like you said, I mean, there's no reason why anything should be audibly coming through, right? So when that started happening, were you guys like, oh my God, like, what was your reactions when you started getting hits with this new technology?
Well, when we
Her
started
reaction was the best.
when we started with the direct radio voice without those software,
Right.
we were getting voices. So that was kind of cool because it was in a barren channel, and we were getting, in the beginning, we were getting a lot of, they can hear us, they can hear us. It was basically things like that.
Oh,
But
wow.
when we did it with the software, the very first time before he started getting it quiet,
Yeah.
there were so many voices, but you couldn't hear what they were saying because there was so many, like if you're in a crowded room.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy shit, because I thought about a medium, especially one that's just coming aware of their abilities, and maybe some experience that there's so many coming in and they don't, right? So
Yeah.
I'm like, this must be overwhelming, because it was overwhelming. I'm like, there are voices here. I can hear them. I can hear the speech, but I can't understand them because there's too many of them.
Yeah.
And that's a reason why he had to lower the noise floor down. And you did tell them that we slowed down the white noise, right?
Yeah, I didn't get into the details of it.
And we slowed down the white noise because sometimes the voices come in quicker than you can detect them.
Okay.
So we slow down but we slow it down just enough that it doesn't distort the other voices coming in. But yeah, it was pretty amazing when we first turned it on. Even though you couldn't understand the voices, you can hear the voices. Yeah. It was kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's taught us the importance of knowing the history and the people who came before us, right? Because a lot of us who are doing stuff in this field are not the first persons to do mediumship or sketch art mediumship or ITC or whatever boxes. So it's important to not just to know their successes, their failures, their attempts. And so for two reasons, that's very valid for us with this. One, the pioneers, specifically a gentleman named Konstantin Radove, who before they were called EVPs on recordings, they were called Radove voices, before it was electronic voice phenomena. He had said that these voices come in faster than we can detect, like Lourdes mentioned, and faster than the human vocal tract is capable of speaking.
Really?
And we caught one time that sounds like, I believe it was my mother. That's my belief. And it came in super fast at only 50% slowed down after the fact, prior to us slowing down in real time. Only then did I hear this female voice that was enunciating clearly and emphasizing stuff and saying a whole bunch of stuff to me that I didn't catch in the real time at all because it came in that fast. I sounded drunk, 50% slowed down on the recording, but the voice sounded like William Shatner in every role you've ever seen him in, and with how clearly and overemphasized it was.
Yeah.
So that reminded me of what the pioneers said. So that's one big reason that it's important. The other reason is with regard to the software. A lot of times the early ITC pioneers report periods of time that the well went dry. No voices. The voices seemed to go away for a couple of weeks, a couple of months. Sometimes it would say a year. And I think that the differentiating factor between what we're doing and them is not that we're getting more voices than them, but that without the use of the real-time software filtration that's reducing the noise floor, they may have gotten things that didn't reach an amplitude that became detectable over the noise, which they were also hearing.
Interesting.
This is just my hypothesis. This is what I think, because there's a consistency to how often we get the voices and a non-locality involved with the fact that we can get them pretty much anywhere.
Yep.
So I think that perhaps when those people in the past using just the radio had dry spells, they weren't getting anything that was discernible enough through resonance or otherwise over the noise floor and amplitude to make it detectable or identifiable as language. Whereas because we're reducing that noise floor, it seems like we get more, and we get more of it consistently. And I think that's, so I don't think we're doing better than them. I think we're doing something different. Imagine a massive landscape with dinosaur bones all over it, and one guy with a toothbrush finds a little bone. Now we have a team of people with brushes gently dusting it off, and now you find the whole dinosaur skeleton. I think that's tantamount to what we've done, is we've got more of that gentle dusting off what it is without distorting or damaging it to see what's revealed through the mechanism.
That's a cool analogy. I like that. Tech question for you. Are you guys familiar with guitar effects pedals at all? Much?
Yeah. Well, not to a great degree, but we had one of the portal boxes before that has like the reverb and noise gate and stuff. I have used that.
The reason I ask is because there's one called the compressor. You ever heard of a compressor pedal? Basically, kind of like if you're playing a low note, barely audible, it'll go from like barely audible to like middle ground. And if you whack it real hard, it'll take the peak of it and just boop. Is that kind of what you're doing with some of these voices that come through as well with your technology? Like to allow like the really quiet some to be more amplified and the really loud ones to be more audible. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it absolutely makes sense. And there is a component within the chain. So the software element is a VST or a virtual studio software. And within that, there's multiple components that do multiple things for audio.
Okay, yeah.
And one of them is a compressor. And there's another one that has compressor-like traits to it.
Sure.
Where it will take the stuff that's perhaps lower and try to bring it up louder a little bit.
Okay.
So it's a balancing act because you're denoising and at the same time trying to bring these things forward without killing the very thing you're trying to have emerge. So that's where the balancing act comes in, is that sometimes, and the guy Keith Clark who showed us the software, he's more liberal with regards to how much noise he'll have come through because he doesn't want to lose even some of the lower things that are mixed in with that. I would rather get less and have more discernible and have it pop more, just because of the purposes of what we're doing. I feel like if you go, hey, we're going to have a serious business conversation together. Do you want to have it here in the living room when we both sit on the couch, or do you want to have it in the middle of a bar with people shouting things at each other? I would go with that first scenario for an effective conversation. That's why we like to gate the noise down a little bit extra and have stuff that's prominent present itself.
That's cool.
What are some of the challenges that you've seen with the system?
That's a great question. We don't get that question a lot.
Or maybe what were some of the challenges in the beginning when you first started working with it?
Okay, well, that opens up another vertical. One of the early challenges as far as the system goes was I had to upgrade to a better computer to a gaming computer because I maxed out the resources on the other one.
Oh shit.
It was buffering and skipping, and the sound was going which was interesting because at that time I temporarily freed resources and then resumed doing a session recording. And when I resumed, I asked what happened to us, and the voice said, "Your system appears to have pulsing beats, bad connection." Like, it described the problem precisely,
Holy cow.
what we were going through. Yeah, it was wild. Odd enough too is that some of the best stuff we've gotten over the years, not everything, but a couple of the best things we've recorded were during times the system was not working optimally, where there was something wrong. I had to troubleshoot and figure out what it was, but it was yet somehow still functional, and I guess allowing the voices to come through the way they do.
I think the biggest challenge was getting rid of that noise floor. That was one of the biggest challenges, getting rid of that noise floor, because
Sure.
even though when he was getting rid of it, there were too many voices still coming in. And when you have too many of them, it's really hard to hear.
Yeah.
And we still have, it's not like we get one voice, we get like 3 or 4 still coming in. So you got to really be attentive when you're listening.
Mhm.
But I think that was one of your bigger challenges.
That was,
right?
yeah, that. And there was one time we had an event at the Shanley Hotel in Appomattox, New York, and I had added a few new components, which occasionally, I'll do upgrades and try to improve on it. And I had alternate profiles settings saved, so I had options. But what happens is that the system has all these components chained together, and it loads them in the order they were placed. So even if you add a new component, let's say you have 20 things chained together, and the sound processes through those 20. If you add something new and you put it in slot 3, it's going to load slot 3 before it goes through the whole chain. So if that one's problematic, and this is what happened, it won't continue to run through. So it wouldn't start up. And I didn't have my little portable drive with the backup of the setup with me. So we did a lecture, and the PowerPoint was working fine. We did a lecture, and instead of going into a digital seance, we had let everybody go investigate. And in 90 minutes, off of memory and a couple of screenshots, I rebuilt the whole system
Holy shit.
so it could run.
Wow.
And it was almost up to where it was before, because they had gotten really good. The 2 new components were really good. One of them I would not reintroduce because I was afraid of it. But so that was a big challenge with that, because it only happened that one time. And I guess just like anything else you download, sometimes it can be corrupt or go corrupt. It sounded amazing the night before. That day, it just would not complete the startup. So even the alternate profiles I had, I couldn't access them because it wouldn't finish starting up the default one because it couldn't get through the chain. So I was aging like a sitting U.S. president, sitting there trying to figure out what it is I needed to do. And I was like, you know what, the hell with it. I know how to do this.
Mhm.
Right.
I took a fresh canvas, so to speak, in the virtual studio, and I rebuilt the whole freaking thing
Oh
from
man.
ground up.
Trial by fire, right? Oh my god.
No,
Yeah, it
there,
was not fun.
there was a question in the chat. Can you tune in your system pending where you are, i.e., bringing down control to pinpoint it on the right level of voices?
See, that looks like 2 different. I know he's using it as an example, but they seem like 2 different questions there.
Yeah, can you tune your system depending on where? I think it means depending on where you are. For example, bringing down control to pinpoint. So I think he's basically asking, if you go to a different location, can you retune or recalibrate to match the level of where the voices are coming in? I don't do that, and I don't know that that's necessary or plausible for 2 reasons. One, we're using the full broadband of white noise. We're not using little factions of it. We're using the whole thing, for one. And we don't, and this is important, we don't have access or direct access to anything having to do with the sourcing of the voices, or we believe this is consciousness, and it's just like when we speak, it's mentation, and then it's turned into an audible sound wave through mechanistic ways like the when we speak. I think it's similar to that, and we can get into that part of it, which is what our technical idealism speaks to. So I don't know, like if you had a radio, an FM radio, and there was one station playing music and you wanted to hear music, but you didn't know what that station was, that's to me kind of what we would be looking at. Like, we would be going through the entire dial trying to find out where the voices even are. Because the radio tuner tunes to the frequency of the carrier wave, not the frequency of any of the voices and stuff that are coming in.
Okay.
That's how the radios work. So in our instance, we think that the white noise is working like a high entropy canvas or a carrier wave to allow what these vibrational thought patterns are that we're communicating with consciousness. We think it's allowing them to become modulated or intermodulated, transduced into a level where it becomes audible to us.
I mean, because depending on where we are, it's not like our system has access to the environment per se, like the obelisk that may pick up things from the environment. Although the environment plays a role, because where we are, that's the kind of questions that we ask, and then we get the voices. But it's not that the system, because he says depending on where you are, we get the voices anywhere we go.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's not that the environment necessarily plays a role in the system because it picks up things from the environment. If that makes sense, I don't know. But of course, the environment plays a role in that. You'll be asking questions about the environment. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we don't know anything about, again, the sourcing of the noise. We hypothesize based on consciousness and other stuff what we think is happening overall, but what we do is we give ourselves the availability of hearing everything within the hearing range, and then using that high entropy or chaotic canvas, so to speak, as something that allows it to intermodulate into a detectable range. Because we used to think this was something akin to stochastic or inverse stochastic resonance, where something matches a frequency in the white noise, meaning it's also within that same 20 hertz to 20,000. And then when the matching frequencies resonate, it gets louder, because that's what happens. But for that to be the case, then the frequency or whatever it is that these voices are initiated at would have to also be already measurable and detectable. And we don't think that they are. Hence the need to intermodulate those or transduce them up. The same way if you got a VLF converter for very low frequency, which is below long wave. Used to be used for submarines and previously emergency services, but they've since put those in the upper gigahertz range now. You can get a VLF converter, and then if you have a regular world band radio with shortwave, the converter will receive the VLF signal and it'll bump it up or transduce it so that your radio can play it where you can hear it modulated at like 1435 shortwave, even though that's not where it's coming in.
Interesting.
So we think that's what the white noise as a high entropy canvas is doing to make these things audible.
And we think that applies to a lot of the devices, if not all the devices, because Christy says fan noise is white noise, and she's right.
It is.
It is. And that's why sometimes you hear disembodied voices, because there's something in the white noise in the environment, and there's resonance that happens, not with our system. Our system is a closed system, and like he says, it's more of a transducing.
Yeah.
But the white noise, there's something with white noise that helps us to be able to hear those disembodied voices. There's something that resonates. And we think that that's what happens with the ghost boxes. Because me personally, when I would hear EVPs or voices come out of the ghost boxes, it was never within the suite. It was either below the sweep, very low, or so loud that it would replace that sweep. I would never hear it within the sweep. And from what we do, it's our theory, and we may be wrong, maybe right, who knows, that they're actually using the white noise within the sweep. And that's why you hear them below the sweep and above the sweep. Same thing like with the DR60. It's flawed, but that white noise, the mechanism causes the internal mechanism causes a white noise bed, and that's why you'll get those voices, and people love using it because they seem to think that they get more voices than with a regular. So we think there's something with white noise all across the board, something with white noise that helps. Yeah,
that's cool. So I've heard you guys say this a couple of times now. You're talking about the source of these voices, right? The source of, coming from the consciousness and stuff like that. Now, when you go to haunted locations, or even just use this, like you said, Ron, you said you thought your mom had come through with this device. Is that correct? So it can be used on a loved one's perspective, not just from connecting to people that are at these locations. So my question for you guys is, have you ever had a voice come through that has presented itself as not human?
Well, we've had angels, like they'll say they're angels. We had
Yeah.
astral. Did we get astral before?
Ethereal, yeah.
Yeah, we get those kind of things. And once we got alien, you know.
Yeah, I take that with as Bernardo was, a whole bag of salt. Right?
Yeah, not just a grain, a whole bag. Yeah, right.
Because I could call you up and disguise my number and change my voice, and I could say that, listen, I'm going to space tomorrow. I don't want anybody to know I'm an astronaut. It doesn't mean I'm going to space.
Right.
Right. So something might identify as something. I'm not saying it's not angelic. I'm not saying that it's not non-human or anything. But what I'm saying is that just based on what it says, I wouldn't necessarily lean into it. And there's a whole other. So just to kind of preface this, so the idealism part, analytic idealism, I've been studying for a few years. I'm in an ambassadorship under Dr. Bernardo Kastrup, who champions this version of idealism. It's not new, but his version's a little bit more analytical, hence the name. And it basically posits that the foundation for reality, the substrate, the part by which you cannot reduce any more, but from which you can explain all else, is consciousness, subjectivity, mental stuff, right? So that's the foundation for that. So when it comes to this particular stuff, when something says that it's something, when the language is discernible and we recognize it, I don't jump to, we've been asked, you think you're communicating with aliens. I don't think so. And I don't think it's possible for us, and I'll explain, because I know both of you are mediums. I think that the plausibility behind that being a thing would lie much greater with yourselves than it would be for us. And the reason is that when we hear language that we know, that means it's being conveyed from wherever it's coming from. We have no reason to think that a species from another planet or another galaxy, let alone, we don't have it here, right? You can't translate dolphin into English. You can't. You can translate German into English, because there are archetypal patterns within the language that are universal. And then there are empirical references. Like if I say I have a streaming show, you know what that means, both empirically, because you know what a stream of water is, and you know what streaming data is. We have no reason to think that some alien race from somewhere else has those same references or archetypal thought patterns to think along the same cognitive avenues that we do. We have no reason to think it. So we're taking a huge leap when we say that the ITC stuff, these things are communicating with aliens, because there's no translator involved. And if we think that it's a mere matter of translation like a Rosetta Stone, that's naive. There's nothing in place to do that. So for us, I don't think that's possible. Now, for a physical person as a medium, like what you both do, the plausibility in that comes to me in this possible. I'm not saying this is the case, but this is at least internally consistent. It's got explanatory power, and it seems coherent, which is the same way, like during a dream or something, when the part of your brain that does not deal with language, right, and cognitive functions such as words and language, like when that part of your brain in the hot zone conveys something to the frontal cortex where that problem solving and complexity is with language, it will sometimes perhaps do it in symbology or in imagery, so that you see and then figure out through
your language.
Right. Yeah. So you interpret what it is. So I think it's possible that if like people report with extraterrestrial situations that they have, or with these non-human entities, that they have communication by telepathy. If there is a mind communique happening, it makes sense to me. It's possible, just saying possible, that they could have, through an infiltration of your cognition, to have the hot zone, so to speak, communicate through symbology or imagery to the front, that which it wants you to figure out and understand. That's as close to that as I'll get with it. But I don't think for what we do, I think it's naive to think that another race from another galaxy somewhere else is going to have those same archetypal thought patterns and empirical references and be able to just tell us, just think in our language. people go, well, maybe they've been hanging around observing a long time. We've been observing dolphins, and dolphins have been observing us. Elephants, same thing, and we're still not talking to them.
Right.
Right, because the symbols, we can't translate it, right? So there's
Yeah.
no way for us to, right? So hence we got, I am an alien. So that's what we're thinking, like, is it an alien?
Right.
No, you know?
Right.
I have this huge smile on my face because one, that is an incredibly grounded and realistic, like beautiful answer. I love that you take that approach. You know what I mean? Because like anybody could be, oh, it said alien. Oh my God, it has to be an alien. But you really dug in there and like looked at the realistic like science behind it. And I fucking love that. Like that is great.
Me
No, I
and
appreciate-
also connecting it to
appreciate that.
mediumship in that way, like for the telepathy part, like connecting in that way, like, yeah, like it could be possible. Like, you know, they had Coco the gorilla that learned sign language, right? But you're not going to learn the vocalization of a gorilla and be like,
Right.
oh, they said, I want food. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. That just really was a great, I'm just, that's awesome. Like, and I like the
Definitely.
groundedness about it. I like the realistic scientific approach about it. Cause like me personally, I like to take a lot of woo woo out of some of this stuff. And that is 100% what that answer was for me. So thank you for that.
No, I appreciate it. Well, so when I got involved with Bernardo Castro in analytic idealism, which is a metaphysical philosophy,
Yeah.
it grounded all of our stuff. It changed how we look at this stuff. She said it explained her life to her. It's very skeptically parsimonious, which means that when we try to explain stuff, it's as few steps as necessary, not cutting out something that you need, but not inventing things.
Right.
Right, which I think the paranormal field does a lot. Like for as a great example, like if I went outside tomorrow morning and there were footsteps in the mud by the door, right? I could look at that and say, somebody came to the house, they thought about breaking in, they looked in the window, they saw the alarm magnet, they go, oh, this is not good, the door's locked, they decided it's a bad idea, and they left. With that same piece of starting evidence, I could also say that a ship came down from the Pleiades, landed in my neighbor's backyard, stole his Crocs, came over with a gardening hoe and a shovel, went to my front door hoping to come inside and get Cool Whip, but realized that the house was locked, heard a noise, got scared, and ran back into space with a gardening hoe and a tool shovel.
Yeah.
And now halfway through
Yeah.
space, they decided to throw the shovel out the window, and now there's a shovel circling the rings of Saturn that caught in that when they threw it out. I can say all that from the same thing.
Sure.
And the beauty of this example is that you can't prove that it's not true.
Right. It could be either
But this-
scenario because you just don't know.
Right.
Right. And the point behind that is that the binary approach we take to being that it's true, and if not true, it's false. And if it's not false, then it's true. Not necessarily. So for us, it's not about that. And it's not about proving, because science doesn't prove. Math proves. Science leans into what's most probable and reasonable based on all known factors. And we don't know that we know all the factors.
Sure.
Right? Science can't prove something ineffably, because if they do, then that says that they no longer have the right to revisit something if new discovery, new information, new data comes forward. It's too late. That's a law. That's done. Right? Some laws of nature, right? Like the speed of light had changed for a period of time, a couple times. I forget what if you remember what year that was.
I think it was in God, I don't remember anymore. We have it
Early 1900s more?
1970 something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so not even
So-
that far back in our history then.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what they did is that because since they say it's fixed,
Yeah.
so what they did was the tool, the mechanism that they use to measure that, they rigged it in a way that if it happened again, it would fudge the numbers so they can get that same
It'll
fixed
calibrate
number.
to the speed it's supposed to be, right?
Right. And a good example of what he's talking about, because like Bigfoot, right? Let's talk. Some people think that you see Bigfoot and then it disappears and it goes into another dimension.
Right.
Right.
It's a very popular thing now. It's called interdimensional hypothesis.
I've heard of that. Yeah.
In large part, we're on board with what it's saying.
Is it possible? Sure, it can be possible, but we believe it's still in the same plane as we are. It's
Right.
just now vibrating in a higher mental state where we can no longer see it with the tools that we have, with the sensory input that we have. And think about water. You boil water, and then the water starts boiling, and then it steams and it evaporates. the water didn't go to another dimension. It's
Right.
right. And
Right.
then when the state vibrates lower, it rains, right?
Yeah.
It rains, and there
Yeah.
goes your water again. So but the water didn't go to another dimension. So
Right.
we believe that extra step, like believe it up to that point. There's
Sure.
no need to have a place that they go. Instead, we believe that they're still there, but you just can't detect them anymore.
Right. So two
That
important
makes
things
sense.
here when she used the word believe, because that's what we're going off of with all of this stuff is what we believe. So why do we prefer the idealist explanation? Again, when you add things into a theory, then you have to answer to falsification. You have to answer to empiricism, right? When you remove things from a theorem, the strength in that comes from the fact that it's skeptically parsimonious. When you remove things, the strength comes from the fact that you're removing things from the explanation through that reductionism. So that's one of the reasons why we lean into it. So the idea behind interdimensional hypothesis is that these things are visible, then they vibrate, and we don't know if that's willfully or if it's just haphazardly, and then they vibrate, and then now they're in another plane of existence, right? And what she was trying to put forth is that when you change the vibrational rate of water, if you slow it, it freezes. If you enhance it, if you speed it up, it becomes steam. And if you speed that up, it becomes plasma. When it becomes steam, it's no longer detectable at some point. It doesn't mean it went into another realm.
Right.
Now, to go back to what I said before, I'm not saying that's impossible because I don't know, right? But the
Right.
difference between the explanation that we put forth under idealism and that is that other dimension or realm is empirically elusive. We don't have any direct or indirect access to it.
Sure.
So what it does is it fills an explanatory gap for the purposes of filling an explanatory gap. And the reasoning behind it is circular. You go, we know these things vibrate into a different dimension because when they disappear, they go into a different dimension. The reasoning is circular. It's self-referencing, self-verifying.
Mm-hmm.
So it's possible. But what I said before is that it's not about proving whether it's true or not because you can't prove.
Right.
Do we have any reason to lean into it? That's what we look at, right? So could you, like I said, the other thing with the footprint, you can't not prove it. You can't disprove that, but there's no reason to think it because it's not grounded in anything.
Right.
So that's why we think that the vibration changing and it becomes undetectable. Absolutely. But if everything is within consciousness, and consciousness is a substrate for reality, then it can still be around us in the same way that the steam is, or anything else that's vibrating at a level that we're not able to detect through our sensory input, through our dashboard, with our measuring devices, our five senses that tell us what's going on around us. So it's still elusive in the same way, it still vanishes in the same way, and it still could be vibrational that causes that. But when you make it go to another physical place, that's another planar dimension, then you're invoking what I feel is materialism 2.0, right? And that's the important thing about, I think, in the paranormal field, the idea of metaphysics or metaphysical gets conflated with candles and sage and crystals and incense. That's not, metaphysics literally means that which stands behind the physics. Science tells us what nature and reality does. It doesn't tell us what it is. Isness is a philosophical or a metaphysical philosophical question, and we don't pin it down, but we try to make the most sense of it. And in doing so, we can't ignore what science tells us. Science can rule out a lot of buffoonery up front so we know when we theorize what reality might be, what to or what maybe not to include. But science doesn't speak to isness. It doesn't tell us what's behaving. It tells us what the behavior may or may not be, will or won't be. That's the difference. It asks questions of nature and then through outcomes gets answers, but it doesn't tell us what's behaving. That's what metaphysics does. So when you don't know your metaphysical stance or what you believe, a lot of times in the field, people will invoke science and then violate it in the same theory.
Yeah.
Because they're
Yeah.
pulling one page from each book. And then you can't do that. You can't mix
Right.
You can't mix the two, then it becomes completely inconsistent.
I mean, I guess it gets confusing because the candles and the crystals, those are all ritualistic tools that you use to be able to communicate what's behind the physics. It's not what's behind the physics itself. So,
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
so-
similarly, like you were talking about earlier, it was like, is it plausible that an angel had come through in your device? Sure, it's plausible. Is it also plausible that maybe a woman came through and she was like, "Oh, I was an angel. I was a perfect
There you
angel.
go. There you
know?
go.
I
right.
wouldn't
And
have hurt a soul. I was nice to everybody." So
Mhm.
language, right, and how we
Yeah.
perceive said language, right?
That's it.
100%. 100%. Yeah. We are myth making, narrative creating creatures. Nothing that we take in through perception does not come with a narrative. Myth
Right.
is the very reason we have the stories and the experiences and the way we convey them. 100%. What we like about this metaphysics is that, well, first of all, the default worldview that's prominent right now is physicalism or materialism, which says that all there is physical stuff, and anything experiential or qualitative, what's called qualia, emerges from complex arrangements or from physical things, right? So your brain is this physical squishy thing, and it gives rise to consciousness. If now, with the interdimensional hypothesis thing we talked about, if you go with the way it's explained now, to the point of it that something not just vibrates out of sight, but it vibrates to another plane of existence, another physical plane or somewhere else, then that's invoking materialism. And then that's where I fall off of that, because it's invoking a place for it to go that we have no direct or indirect access to. It's not provable. It's not falsifiable. There's no way to know other than it fills an explanation, a gap in the explanation. Where we do know that something can vibrate out of where we can see it here and still exist here. We don't need to invent another plane of existence for it to go.
Right.
So that's where we look at that. So physicalism, or now it used to be called materialism, people may know it more that way. That metaphysics, that belief in reality being physical, primarily all physical, and things come from that belief system doesn't allow for the paranormal. It doesn't allow for the things that you do, that we say we do. It doesn't allow for any of that stuff. So when you don't know that, and then you start playing the game but trying to take on the skeptics or the cynics and stuff, that's why we gain no ground and lose. Because we're going into a football stadium wearing ice skates and carrying a hockey stick, and we can't figure out why we don't score. It's the wrong game. We're not equipped for the game that we're trying to play.
Right.
The
Makes
metaphysics,
sense.
the metaphysics is everything. Even science starts with belief, right? When anything is ever deemed impossible, through scientific method or otherwise, it is because of the fact that it does not fit into what is believed to be possible. There's an ideology or a belief system in place, and when it doesn't fit into that, that's when it gets disqualified. Or everybody knows that, what's called the Sagan standard, that extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof or evidence. That's only true if, by termed extraordinary or extraordinary, it is done so because it doesn't fit into the belief system or the dogma that says it's not possible.
Mm-hmm.
So it starts with belief,
Right.
and human beings are the ones doing science. Science should be metaphysically agnostic and neutral. It should just have outcomes based on experiments and questions. That's it. But the outcomes and the data are interpreted by people, and people have metaphysical beliefs. So if they think that physicalism is what's true, then the psi phenomenon that people like you guys put forth and say that you do is impossible, and it's a bunch of crap. Because the metaphysics doesn't allow for it.
And I wanted to say with Scott McCafferty, hey Scott, by the way, and you're right about the tribers. The thing is that we're hardwired for it, but then we lose meaning of what's there because then we add that noise that we add the extra, and that's how everything gets confused with that. But what was his next thing? How often?
His question is how often skeptics are open to ideas beyond materialism.
I don't think that often that they are, because a lot of times their positions in the ground is rooted in physicalism or materialism. That's how they're disqualifying things. That's how they're saying it's not possible.
It's hard, especially if their position is to be that. So they already have that agenda. That's what they believe in, and that's what they believe in.
Right.
So it's hard to have them switch. It's even hard because even the people that understand or resonate with what we're saying, when they speak of it, they also revert back to materialism, because we were all trained, we were all like,
Yeah.
I'm going to
Yep.
say brainwashed to be under materialism since little kids,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
That's what it is. So it's hard to, even if you resonate with what we're saying, when they explain it, they always revert back to materialism, which is what I did too in the beginning. Even though I understood what was happening and when I would explain it,
Yeah.
the language was messing me up. It was the way I was expressing it. Now I had to learn a new way to express it.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Yeah.
Well, I think
So
very
it's
much
kind of-
along the same line is like there's people that are skeptical, which is fine, but there's also people that are cynical, which you're never going to get through to them.
Yeah.
The cynics are always going to find some way to poo-poo on what you're doing or what we're doing. Skeptical people at least will try to look at what they're getting as far as information and go, okay, well, that resonates with me. Maybe I'll look into that. At least in my
And
opinion.
it's hard for them to
Yeah, she's right.
if they are rooted
Yeah,
in their
curious, yeah.
woo-woo stuff and they've like that's in there, like that's what they know. It's hard for them to say that they believe still that it's that, like, you know, like what is the other one, stone tape theory is another one.
Yeah.
So we believe that it happens, absolutely, the experience happens, but we don't think it happens in the way that they explain it now, how people explain how it happens. We have a different theory.
I've been pegged on a few different podcasts since we got deep into the idealism as a skeptic. When I was clear up front, I am not dismissing anybody's experience. I won't say that something didn't happen, especially if I don't know. I can't even make an argument for it. So I think what we call stone tape happens. I think what we call psychometry happens. And I think what we call residual happens. But I think that the explanations for those invoke science, they lean on materialism, and then they fall apart.
It doesn't make sense.
And that's what I had written in an academic essay that was top 5% on academia for a couple of months, a couple of weeks in 2024, when I reapproached the whole idea behind stone tape, because I think what happens, but not the way that we're explaining it, because it's really, really empirically inadequate, and it's an internal contradiction halfway through it.
It doesn't jibe with physics.
And I think that's the other reason why the cynics don't budge, is because when we invoke science and then violate it, we look naive. And I'm not a scientist, nor am I claiming to be at the wisdom level of a scientist, but I will tell you that when I sit, and this is what changed me a lot, when I sit in these meetings every week with Dr. Bernardo Castro, and then some of the people he brings in, top neuroscientists, biologists, other philosophers, and he holds 2 PhDs, one in philosophy, one in computer science engineering, and he did AI creation and all that. I'm humbled beyond belief, inspired and humbled at how brilliant and how vastly educated across different fields and stuff that these people are. But that's what really attracted us to the idealist view, because it's very, and I think Christy mentioned it earlier, having like Occam's razor, like the fewest amount of steps, the most direct way to explain something, the simplest way, but without excluding things that are necessary, perhaps, but not inventing things for the purposes of it, which is, I think, where interdimensional goes wrong. I think it's playing off of vibrational things and disappearing and all that stuff is great. As soon as it puts another dimension that it goes to that we have no access, then I think it starts, and then it steps into materialism. It's saying that it's going to another physical place.
There's no need for the extra step.
Yeah.
Like if you just take, like, well, the water example, if you just take things that you already know in science and physics, you can just stick to that instead of putting the extra, because although maybe there is another dimension, but there's no need for it, and then it's just there's no explanatory, there's no evidence there for it, so we just stick to what we already know and we don't put any extras in it.
Yeah, if we can explain it with what we know, then why add in the extra stuff? That's where we get hit with the woo label.
Now I was wondering, when you go into locations and you bring the system with you, Are there a few experiences that you can share where it's made a huge healing impact on the location itself that you have gone to?
I'm not gonna say locations, I'm gonna say individuals.
Yeah.
We get sometimes we get people's loved one that comes through. The first one was a 15-year-old girl who thought she was connecting with her grandmother, and she asked her, and I don't remember the name of the show, so I'm gonna make it up. But she asked her, "Grandma, if this is you, what's the name of the TV show we used to watch when I was little?" And clear as day, you hear Dr. Roberts, some weird name nobody knew, and she started crying.
Oh,
And she was like, "That's my grandmother. That's the show. That's the show." It was life changing for her.
that's
We've
amazing.
had friends who had, his mother, was it his mother or his grandmother? Richard.
Who's his grandmother?
Yeah, so we've had things like that. And in the New Jersey Expo, we get a lot of people that for some reason in that particular event,
Yeah.
we get people bring in family members the following year and friends because they want them to experience what they experienced, because we get a lot of people's loved ones that come through.
Yeah.
So
I love
And
that.
yeah.
to be fair to your question too, like I wouldn't know how to assess whether we did anything that had anything to do with healing or damaging a location necessarily. But I don't think that the question is incoherent either, because under idealism, which jives with quantum physics, physicality is a result of observation and measurement. Things don't have physical parameters that when we observe and measure them, then they just reveal those. Physicality is a result of observation and measurement. So under idealism, the house or the location isn't fundamentally physical. It's mental, but to our senses, to our observation, it appears as physical. So the house is a mental construct, as is what has happened there, whether it's qualitative or experiential, as are the people there. Our physicality is how it appears to somebody else, but we're not fundamentally physical. So under idealism, with mentation or subjectivity being the substrate or the foundation for reality, then it makes sense that something could perhaps affect the location in the way that you asked. So the question is coherent. I don't know that I have the ability to explain any way to assess said change in a positive or negative way. Perhaps people who went afterwards maybe would have experiences that slant one way or the other, and that could be attributed to that maybe causally, but it would be hard for me to pin it down. But the question's actually a lot smarter and a lot deeper, which is why I wanted to acknowledge the brilliance behind the question and not seem like I was doing the opposite by my inability to speak to it in great detail.
Scott also is saying, I think being able to just experience the cosmic consciousness in those moments in the part that's healing.
Yeah, because it gives you a sense, number one, they're okay.
Right.
Number two, maybe it feels more safer to pass on to the other side, maybe less afraid because they're okay and they passed over. So it maybe gives a sense of everything is going to be okay, right? That's what I think. That because when you do connect like that, it's like how, right? So I think that's the healing part, because it makes you feel like, okay, they're okay, they're passing. That means I'm gonna be okay. We're all gonna be okay. When we pass on, it's gonna be fine.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, which is part of the myth-making perceptual narrative stuff that we tell ourselves from it. And I'm not saying it's wrong, just for consistency's purpose, right? Just to kind of point that out. That's the other reason why the idea of a mental or mentation reality, a consciousness as the foundation for reality, makes sense to us, because it is the only pre-theoretical thing we have. The only thing, right? Subjectivity, everybody we have. Right? Everything from there is theorized or hypothesized or conceived or an abstraction through consciousness and through cognition. So foundationally, you start with consciousness, but you can't explain or through reductionism and reductionism doesn't mean making it smaller. It means taking something complex and reducing it to simplicity. You can't do reductionism on consciousness, because in order to do that would be like putting a scale on top of itself to weigh itself, right? It can't be the subject and object in that relational situation.
Sure.
And if something exists outside of consciousness, for us, it might as well not exist because we don't have access to it. That's how we know everything directly or indirectly. That's why this metaphysics makes sense to us.
Mm-hmm. That's funny. I use this saying a lot when it comes to mediumship, and then I'm going to ask a question after that. But I always say mediumship without validation is just your imagination. You know what I mean? And I think that kind of plays into what you're talking about a little bit.
It does. And so I love that you brought that up because anecdotal, subjective, imagination, hallucination, delusion, these are all words that are used by the so-called skeptics to dismiss or diminish any value of experience behind somebody having any one of those types of things happen. And the irony is that when you go, yeah, Chris, you thought you saw a spirit. It was a hallucination, right? So that's my dismissing it like, you know what you're talking about. It's dumb, didn't happen. Right. But in actuality, when somebody says that, they're automatically undermining themselves because the experience of a hallucination is still an experience.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it didn't happen. So if you think that something else is causally involved besides some objective thing out there, then you at least have to take seriously that which is causing it.
Right.
So maybe you don't look at it literally, but you still take it seriously because something that has some kind of merit or influence is causing this so-called hallucination, which again is still experiential. It doesn't mean it didn't happen. Right.
And because I have to mention it now that we're in this topic, and I know you have a question, but there was something that was sent to you or something saying that consciousness is a sham.
It was
consciousness is a sham. But I'm like, consciousness is, and how did you come up with that idea?
Yeah, that's interesting. Exactly, Lourdes. Yeah, what made you think of that? Consciousness. Yeah. Hello. Pay attention, people. Yeah.
This is the danger of that. So nobody sent it to me. That was an online. So there's a lot of online posts you'll see in your Facebook wall that says science says, under science, physicist says. And a lot of times it's either not true or it's highly inflationary, as the theory goes. Highly.
Yeah.
But they take it as truth and it's presented as it's coming from some kind of reputable branch of science. And a lot of times it's just outright wrong, or it's crap, or it's certainly not at the cutting edge of what people in neuroscience or whatever may be working on or thinking. But it gets put out there like it's legit. That one particularly jumped out at me because it was saying that the consciousness, physicist says consciousness is not real, possibly a sham. I was like, well, how did you come up with that?
Right.
Everything you know, directly or indirectly by acquaintance, is through being conscious. So how would you, right? So it's denying itself by using itself to deny itself.
Scale analogy, right?
Yeah, it's circular reasoning. It doesn't go anywhere. So
and I was question for you. Oh no, go ahead.
No, so I'm saying I was looking at some of the comments. I like to address some of these things too because I addressed one thing that Chrissy said, but she's got a lot of really great things that she's putting in the comments. I don't want to
please
ask your question, and I'll go back to that because it'll be there.
Okay. So there's been a lot of research and a lot of tests and things done on mediums and trying to find, for not trying to be punny or anything to use the name of the show, but it seems like the medium frequency has been very elusive. And nobody seems to pin it down on what that exactly is.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you suppose that is?
Because I think that we're trying to put things into a framework that we're comfortable with, by having a measurable, detectable frequency. The frequency of thought necessarily is not pinned down either. I think there's different, right? All brain waves that they measure, if you see it on instrumentation, are not at the same frequency. Different parts of the brain, as physical representation of your personal mind, don't do the same thing, don't function in the same way. We used to think that doing something that would cause a heightened sense, like psychedelics, would light the brain up like a Christmas tree, and that's why you have these vivid. But actually the opposite is true. It is the closest thing mentally to death when somebody's on a trip. So you have a low level of brain activity and a heightened, vivid, visceral experience. So, which tells you what? that the brain causing or creating consciousness as an emergent property or an epiphenomena doesn't add up, because if something is causal, it has to be there 1-to-1 every time if that's the cause. If there's one instance, what do they say? If you show me one black swan, you can't say all swans are white. There's your black swan, because there's an instance when experience is heightened, but brain activity is reduced.
Okay.
So it's not creating consciousness. And plus, there's also what's called the hard problem of consciousness, that kind of works around that also, or makes it difficult to explain the brain creating consciousness. But a lot of these things through philosophy, I think people in the field looking at philosophy, metaphysical philosophy, looking at the sciences for sure. This is not to discount science. Science has its role. It's just not. It's not the end all be all, and it's not the only say in this stuff.
Sure.
Right? Scientific method sometimes itself works circular by demanding scientific evidence.
Mm-hmm.
The scientific method, so it validates itself by demanding that which it needs to validate itself, but it's not able to assess everything. Not everything falls into the scientific method, right? Experiential stuff doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes yes, sometimes no, but as a category, experiential stuff does not fall within the measurable, quantifiable. You can't quantify qualitative states, right?
I mean, we don't know where thoughts come from. We don't know where it comes from. So to detect the medium frequency,
Right.
if you're connecting to that universal whole, how can you find it if we don't even know where our thoughts come from?
That's a great
Yeah.
point too.
Right.
Yeah, so I think that's part of the problem with trying to pin that down is, and even that, like, I don't know. I mean, if they found one frequency, right, I still don't think you could pin it down, right? To have one frequency that where mediumship happens, because it's individual subjectivities.
Right. Because when we get voices, we can get the same voice, but it'll say a word or two over here in this little frequency, and then it'll pop up over here, and then it'll pop up over here. But it's the same voice. It sounds exactly the same. It's the same voice. So it's not in that consistent same frequency.
Right. And who's to say that clairvoyance doesn't rate at a certain frequency and clairaudience is at a different frequency, claircognizance is at a different frequency, right? Maybe there's a lot of them that kind of work in conjunction with themselves.
That's right.
Yeah, we think that for a person who's a medium like you guys, we don't think. I hate that it gets called gifts or abilities. Maybe not bad, because gifts
because
make
you have
it
the
sound,
ability to use them, because
right.
we all have them, but you guys actually do. You use
Right.
that ability.
Gifts makes it sound like it's this rare magical thing that, and it starts putting it outside the ideology that really doesn't accept it. So, right. So then it becomes a battle to try to validate or get somebody to support stuff that you do when you read stuff. But in a mental reality, such as idealism, right? And so every metaphysical explanation, which doesn't pin it down, but attempts to define what reality may be, all has a drawback. So the detraction for physicalism is the hard problem of consciousness, which is that it says that there's no way to deduce, at least in principle, the qualities of experience, like the smell of a strawberry, the taste of chocolate, from any physical arrangements, right? There's no way to deduce how physical things will give rise to these qualitative states. It's not a problem to be solved. The hard problem is basically saying that we need to step back and rethink what we think reality is, because we know and experience is the precursor to everything. Everything we know directly or indirectly is through experience. If I go, this is heavy, that gives you an expectation, but when you pick it up, maybe you don't think so. So for you, it's not heavy, but you know that heavy or not heavy through experience, right?
Yeah.
So we have under idealism its own distraction, which is that, well, if there's one universal consciousness that we're all part of, then how do you explain all of us, right? Why do we identify separately, right? It's called the decomposition problem. And so the answer to that is you at least look for if there's an example or a modality in nature that you can draw a parallel to, and then extrapolate on a larger scale. And there is something that in psychology and psychiatry is called dissociative identity disorder. It used to be multiple personality. Now, we're not saying that the cosmos are suffering from a pathology. We need to cure it. What we are saying is there's an instance when one individuated mind will fragment into individual centers of subjectivity. And then if it can happen there, then it is safe at least to theorize and extrapolate that if there was one consciousness universally, that each individual one of us is a dissociative alter within that one mind, right? And it happens when we dream. When you dream, you identify as a dream avatar, as yourself. Even though there's animals and plants and houses and birds and people and there's noises and you hear people talking, and you don't identify as all those, you identify as you. But when you wake up, you don't mourn the loss of your dream avatar. You go, oh shit, that was all me. That was one mind. So that's the modality behind explaining idealism. So now, why is that important? No boundary in life, no boundary in nature is perfect. And so we think that the dissociative boundary we have, or what's called a Markov blanket, which is what our physical form looks like across a dissociative boundary, which is you looking at me, right? It's representation of my inner phenomenal conscious life, but it's not that I'm fundamentally physical. But no boundary is perfect. So some people may have a greater level of porosity or openness in their boundary, and people who do what you do have that, what's called the ability. You're more open and you have a more vivid, visceral, open exchange with consciousness than maybe someone who is closed or does not have the same level. It's not mystical or magical. Some people can sing right out of the gate. Some people can't and can learn to.
You practice. That's like anything else. You practice that muscle. When you go to the gym, you use the muscles instrument. You practice until you get good. You guys are not closed off to it. You practice it. You're good at it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So it's interesting what Christy said. Our dreams aren't ours. On a grand scale, I would agree.
But
right?
why?
Because
Yeah.
What'd you say?
Why?
Okay.
So if, again, we're talking ontologically, ontology is the study of beingness, or what is, right? So if you're looking at an ontological being level, right, foundationally, a reduction base, when you try to reduce down life and explain everything, the point you have to stop or you're chasing your tail, that when you're at that point, and if you say reality is fundamentally mental and there's one universal consciousness and we're all just fractal parts or dissociative parts of it, then essentially what she's saying, that our dreams aren't ours, is correct, because we are only individuated as dissociative, partitioned off within that mind.
Okay.
And so the interesting thing that ties this together is what we call synchronicity. When you think of a yellow car, because somebody you knew back in the day had one or whatever, and then all of a sudden, like half an hour or so later, you drive past and then there's a yellow car. We call it synchronicity because it's our inner thoughts aligning with the world out there that we think is objective. But if there's one universal consciousness, then we are just part of that one mind. Again, think of the dream. One mind, all the characters in it, right? One mind is doing all that, but you only identify with one of those. So our thoughts are still part of that mind, but dissociated so that they're our thoughts and not yours or hers or anybody else's. So when it aligns with what's out there, it's just that thought emerging in both my individuated inner conscious life and also out there. It's not two separate things.
Well, I would disagree with him. I think our dreams are ours, because if we're part of that whole, then it's ours, because we're part of it, even though we're dissociated. I don't think it can work both ways. I think it's the same thing all across, because even though we're dissociated, we're still consciousness, but we are part of that whole. We're just dissociated and we think we're not. So all around, if you think of it as a whole, we're part of that whole. So the dreams are ours, whether we're part of that whole or dissociated.
This is the beautiful thing. I hope that the field can learn from this dynamic too. We agree for the most part, but we will have philosophical arguments that will make people uncomfortable.
I love that, actually.
I do too.
So we were outside of a hotel one time when we were, I think it was the main Paracon, and the lady came out.
Or maybe,
the lady came outside from the front desk because somebody said that they heard a couple arguing outside, and we were talking about metaphysical philosophy.
But we got loud.
It was intense. We weren't cursing or insulting each other or
not even mad at each other.
Gestures, nothing. We were just talking.
We get passionate.
Yeah, right.
And sometimes it comes down to just seeing things differently, but we're still kind of on the same page. So what she just said, I don't disagree with, but I'll put it in the context to show the difference against where I'm seeing it. When you have a big body of water, so you have a lake, right? So that lake, that big body of water, that's universal consciousness. And each one of us is separate from it, right? So to speak. Stay with me for a minute. So each one of us is like a whirlpool or a ripple on that lake, right? And that whirlpool or that ripple, especially a ripple, right? It'll have depth, angular momentum, speed, right? So it'll have physical things that you can measure and quantify about it, as we do with weight, height, etc., right? And it seems individuated. It seems its own thing. And each ripple or each whirlpool is its own thing in that big body of water. Right? So for me, there's her argument that it's our own because it's in that whirlpool, right? It's in that individuated state.
Sure.
But when I answered the comment, and I responded to what Christy said, and I said fundamentally on an ontological level, no, I agree with her that they're not ours. And this is why. There's nothing to the ripple or the whirlpool but the lake. Fundamentally, you can't take the ripple or the whirlpool out of the lake, put it under your arm, and go home. It's a doing of the lake. It's something that nature or reality is doing, as under idealism, as are we. We are a doing. So we have individual status that we identify just as us, right? And that's important for survival. Otherwise, if I felt hunger, I would put the fork up to her mouth. Right? That's a survival thing. So I get that. So I don't disagree with what she said, but fundamentally, ontologically, that's where I would disagree and say that if it's part of the whole and we're not separate from the whole subject object relationally, we're just a doing of the whole, then ontologically it's not ours, but it is ours in as much as we experience it, because we are identifying and experience an individual existence.
So then it's ours, straight up.
Honestly, I can see both sides of that. Really.
Yeah,
Like,
I can see his side.
Is that one individual circle, although it does exist within the lake, which is
there's nothing to it but the lake, right? You can't take it away.
It's not a Venn diagram. You don't have two ripples that kind of intersect with each other. You know what I mean? Or like you said, Ron, you can't take that ripple out of the lake and say, "This is my ripple. I'm taking it home." It is separate from the consciousness or the lake. However, like I said, I see both sides. It's very cool.
I see both sides. It's just the way we're explaining it, but it's this, we're describing the same thing. It's just we're using different words.
The differential is that the experiential side of it, the narrative myth-making side of it for us is ours, is individual. We don't experience the collective.
Right.
But fundamentally, if we are doings of the lake, individual ripples or whirlpools, then it is fundamentally part of nature or mind at large, and not fundamentally ours.
Well, not fundamentally, that is true. But Gene say fundamentally in there.
Right. Well, that's why I made that distinction.
I'm sorry.
No worries. What's interesting is I actually had a actually Matthew and I went to Hollowed Ground to meet Matthew, and we met. I was introduced to two new people, and we actually got into a deep conversation similar to this, because we were talking about like perspectives. And one of the guys that was sitting there with us has the perception that we're just little amoebas in Mother Earth. And the whole concept of like, he's like, well, we're all part of it. It was basically the consciousness conversation, but like from the different like dualities of the perspectives that you're presenting, because the other person that was with us was giving the opposite perspective. So I'm like sitting there listening to all this and I'm eating it up, because I love having philosophical conversations or just listening. So to hear you be able to present something like this confirms that like this is a common conversation that a lot of people have different perspectives on. But I can see where you're both coming from.
Yeah, I think the paranormal field needs to have the conversation more. I got her into the idealist philosophy stuff, and now it sometimes costs me an argument. But I'm thrilled that she's into it and she clearly understands what she's talking about. Sometimes we'll just see things differently. The important thing for viewers to take away from what we're doing now is that we're not saying that we know anything, but we try to posit what we think based on explanatory power, internal consistency, and coherence. That's what we try to do, and not violating science. So our view is what's considered monistic. There's one thing to reality, which is mind. Duality is very popular, that everything in nature can be explained in its totality with mind stuff and matter stuff. Mind and matter explains all reality. A lot of people will believe that. The problem with that dualistic approach is that it says these are two incommensurable separate things, and then it attempts to explain mind in terms of matter by saying that the brain is this physical thing that gives rise to consciousness, which is the mental part. So they're separate, but then one of them gives rise to the other one. The other one is an emergent property of the other one. So that's an internal contradiction. That doesn't necessarily hold up. Dual aspect monism is popular, which is to say that this came from Carl Jung, or what he called unus mundus, that there's one thing that is reality, and two sides of that coin are the physical and the mental. I'm almost on board with dual aspect monism. I stopped short on that one again because I don't know what that one thing is. Right? What is that coin? If physical and mental are both their own thing and they're two sides of that same coin, what is that one coin?
I'm thinking he's talking about consciousness.
Well, that's mental.
Right, but it has two sides, because obviously we see our bodies, right?
Perhaps.
So one side is the mental stuff and one side is the perception of the physical.
All right.
That's what I'm thinking he's saying.
So perhaps, but that's popular amongst a lot of people like Dean Radin, Jeffrey Kripal, who are all excellent people who work to look at. Dean Radin's done a lot of psi phenomenon testing stuff in lab settings to show the validity of what it is, like what you guys as mediums say that you can do. I think this is where the woo stuff and this is where the theories that invent shit that we don't need hurt us, because then people think the stuff that you guys are doing is not possible. Right. And it's, again, anything termed impossible is only because it doesn't fit into the ideology.
Right.
That's the only reason that it happens ever.
See that we live in a.
I was just going to say that, Chris.
Nothing is real
in a simulation. So that's.
Well, I think nothing is real. I won't agree with that. But what I think what she's trying to say is, it's the physical is not. This is a mental perception that we perceive as physical, right. And I think that's what she means, because everything we experience is real. That's our reality. Right. But it's not solid. It's not solid physical stuff.
This is where the language stuff trips us up, because she just nailed something really important. So when you say that nothing is real, that it's a simulation, and then she was saying about physical is what we consider real, that's materialism. That's the metaphysical view of materialism, and that's the view that says that all this paranormal stuff and psychic stuff and all this science is not possible and that it's bullshit. That's the view that says that. That's why it's important to understand what metaphysical stance that we have, right? So first of all, what's real is everything that you experience is real to you. If somebody has mental challenges, if they suffer from anything, their reality is their reality. Even if we call it abnormal, even if we call it absurd or different, it's still real. What you experience is real. A hallucination is a real experience, right? Now, when we say real, it's both rooted in physicality, which is materialism, and when we say real, we're also looking for something that is veridically true, which means something that aligns with the outside world out there, as well as the experience that someone seems to be having with it. We're looking for a veridical connection. That's sometimes true, but sometimes not, right? We're all in an investigation. And Chris goes, I just saw a ghost walk past that hallway. And I go, well, prove it. He goes, well, I can't. Maybe the camera caught it, and then the camera didn't catch it, or the camera did, and then you go from there, right? Now, Chris goes, you know what? I feel hungry. And I go, I don't believe you. Prove it. You can't. Those are two experiences, but you can't prove either of them. But you certainly can't prove, and that's the thing, and this is what Lourdes nailed that I love, is that the physicality part, as what we consider to be real, is a metaphysical position. And physicalism is flawed. That's the problem, that we get caught in this trap when we're dealing with these cynics or the people who claim to be skeptics, because we play right into that argument by categorically terming stuff or phrasing things in a way that gives credence or value or supremacy to physicalism. That's where we fall short, because we're validating that belief system that says what we're talking about is crap.
So, Christy, because some of the stuff that you say I agree with.
Yeah.
But this one also, humans are material bodies with physical movements. So I believe you're starting in the abstract there, because to us, humans are conscious beings that have the perception of material body. You see, like the difference? Like we start from consciousness, not from the material. So for us, humans are conscious beings that have the perception of a physical body with physical movements.
Right.
That's what we believe.
Yeah. Again, this is the consistency of knowing your metaphysical position, right? So as idealists, physicality is, again, a result of observation and measurement. Things aren't fundamentally physical. So consciousness is the one pre-theoretical. It is the only pre-theoretical we have. That before you theorize or try to come up with an idea or conceptualize anything, consciousness is there, right? So that's what we start with, the individuated subjectivity or consciousness that we are. And then our physical form, our body, is what your inner conscious life looks like across two dissociative boundaries, mine and my sensory input and yours, and how it represents itself to me as physical. Under idealism, that's how we see it. If you go with the physical body being something separate, and then the energy or the soul, the life force inhabits the body of the vessel, with that explanation, and again, I'm not saying it's not true, but with that explanation comes the responsibility of positing some coherent idea behind how that soul energy in this physical vessel, how do they commerce? What's the interaction? And that's really not, to my knowledge, ever been explained other than a mystical woo or some kind of a religiosity based explanation for it, right? Again, I'm not saying what I know is to be true or not. I'm saying, but with that comes that. The other thing that Christy said, which was spot on, two people look at the same thing, can see something different.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Now, stay with me. Physicality, result of observation and measurement, not fundamentally physical, right? Per what we were saying with idealism. Now, you can, it is a very well-known, I think if it's in psychology circles, you have a cylinder. And if you light that cylinder from this side, the projection is a square. If you light that cylinder from this side, the projection is a circle. Fundamentally, it's one thing. It's that cylinder. But the representation of it based on the perspective is two different things.
100%. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
But people will use those variances in how we explain an experience that happened somewhere when we're together and say, well, it couldn't be true because Chris saw the ghost, but Lourdes didn't see the ghost, and Raven might have saw the ghost, and Rod didn't see anything, right? So now it's not true. Because for some reason we think we need to have an objective consensus truth or reality to make something legit. No, your hunger is just yours. It's just as legit just because you experienced it.
So I'm actually currently taking my major right now in college is psychology, right? And much to your point, what you just said about the cylinder and the different perspectives, right? There's a mountain around here in Maine called Mount Washington, right? And I could say, oh yeah, Mount Washington, the one with the two big oak trees in front of it. But if you looked at it from the backside, you'd be like, yeah, no, that's not the Mount Washington I know. There's no two oak trees.
Right.
Same mountain, but you're looking at it from a different perspective, right?
Right.
So
exactly.
I think that's really cool. Also, children have that kind of psychological aspect as well. If you were to, put up, I'm trying to think, I don't have anything. Okay, this one right here. So this can of seltzer water, right?
Mm-hmm.
It says polar on it, right? If I held this up to a 4-year-old and said, what does that say? They might say, oh, it's got a polar bear on it and stuff. And I'd be like, is that it? And they'd be like, yep. But they're not going to tell me that the ingredients or the where it was made is on there as well. You know what I mean? Their psychology doesn't think about that. Doesn't think of the bigger picture of the whole picture. You know what I mean?
Right. No, 100%. Yeah. I mean, perception is individual. We can have a shared experience, right? When you have a consensus, like when everybody in a room, when we do our digital seance, hears the same thing, we have a consensus. We don't have proof of the afterlife. There are people doing ITC stuff that say proof of the afterlife. We know some of them. You're not proving anything. It's not proof. You have a consensus, and that's good. It's compelling when you have a consensus and people in the room all heard the same thing, especially when it's regards to identifying language and stuff where it's not supposed to be in this kind of methodology. That's good. But you don't have truth and you don't have proof. You have consensus. You have a bunch of individual subjectivities that seem to be aligned on what the experience was. And that happens in very normal, mundane things. If you came to our house right now, you would perceive the walls and the floor and the furniture the same way we do, most likely, right? So that doesn't mean that those things are fundamentally physical. It just means that our perception of it, there are some things that we will share in perception and some things that we won't.
I mean, even in shared experiences, well, think about a criminal or a suspect, and the two people saw that same person, and they'll describe them differently because they picked up different details of that person. But it's the same person, and they're both saying the truth. They're just picking up different things that the other one didn't pick up, and it's a shared experience.
And you know that they had done tests. I don't remember how long ago, if it was in Switzerland or Germany. I forget. It's been a while since I quoted the study, but they had done tests on people that were allegedly real mediums, and then they had 4 people, and then there were 4 other people who were actors pretending to self and others, method actors, that they were mediums. And what they found was, in the people who were actors, that the brain scan activity, the fMRI or EEG, showed a higher level of excitations in the frontal cortex where complex thought and cognition happens in the actors. But in the actual people who claim to be mediums, there was a reduction in activity or a plateauing, no excitations increased in that part of the brain. So that there is something from a third person perspective that it looks like to actually be a medium. The people faking it were having readings that differed from the people who were just doing it.
It's funny. I will often say when I'm teaching mediumship classes, if it feels like you're just making shit up, then just say it, because you never know. It could actually be validating information. Because if you're just letting it go and just letting it flow in, you're like, oh, well, you had a cherry flavored lollipop yesterday. And someone's like, holy fuck. Yeah, I sure did.
Yeah.
But you think you just made it up, and it's like, no, you didn't just make it up. Like you're letting go of the fact that your analytical mind is letting go, and it's just allowing it to be more perceptive, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Thinking about what you said about imagination, right? The imagination. So one day we were doing the Digital Séance Experience, and this gentleman wanted to know the anniversary date of his, of him and his wife. His wife had passed.
Okay.
And when I tell you, and this is from listening to other mediums, and they say sometimes you'll get information that's relevant to you, and if you say it, it'll resonate with other, with the person. So we never got the date through the Digital Séance Experience, but as we were sitting there, we were just about to move on. I imagined, if you want to say, a happy birthday sign, and it was pink. So I thought about my birthday, April 14th. So I said, it wouldn't be April 14th. It wouldn't be 14. And he goes, that's it. That's it. See? So there is something about the imagination with mediumship. It's not imagination like how we perceive it or define it to be. But it has to do with imagination. You just got to know what is the noise that you're adding stuff, and what is really the imagination that's coming in. That's the true stuff.
Right. And I think you can attest to this too, Raven. Like as a medium, if you try to analyze something that comes through, you're going to be off every time, because our analytical minds change it, and they want to fill in the gaps because we're analytical beings, right?
Yes, that's where it gets messy.
So, for example, at one time, someone showed me Garfield, the cat. And I'm like, you guys have an orange cat? Like, I'm trying to figure this out, and I couldn't figure it out. And the woman's like, no, doesn't mean shit to me. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. Finally, I'm like, Garfield, he loved lasagna. And she's like, well, the person you're connecting with, his favorite food was lasagna. I'm like, well, fucking A. Mythology, analyzing too much, and then people are like, well, why didn't they just say lasagna? Well, I don't know. They decided to show me Garfield. Maybe they liked Garfield. You never know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So odd
That's-
things like that, you know.
That and then what you're teaching is good because they have to learn to be in that flow state, right? The intellect is the bouncer to the heart.
Right.
What we intuit and think and feel sometimes we don't give ourselves intellectual permission to entertain it, and then we doubt, we criticize, and we diminish what it is that we've picked up or sensed or felt, and then oftentimes like that you end up getting rid of something or not sharing and bringing forth something that actually had value or relevance to the given situation or reading.
Or when
Or
you
that
say
validation.
analyze, because you're well, like in the thing that we were talking about before, you're adding extras and you're not really realizing it because you're over analyzing and now you're putting your own stuff in there. If you keep it parsimonious to what you're, and you know, it's that's where the pure information, if that's what you want to call it, the real stuff, the real meat
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like what you were imagining, Lourdes, was not your imagination. You thought of your birthday and what you thought was your imagination. You said it was that, and then the validation came, and the guy goes, "Holy shit, that's the day!"
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And there it is. That's where those.
Because I'm
two-
like, why am I seeing that? Like, why am I seeing a pink happy birthday sign? And at first, I'm just like, my birthday, and I wasn't gonna say it because I really wasn't connecting. I said, wait a minute, medium saying that, you know, that sometimes things come up that's that's yours that'll resonate. I said, well, maybe it's that date, and I said it,
I love it.
and it was it.
Mhm.
Yeah. And that's part of the
Yeah.
challenge, right? When you conceive something to determine whether or not that was something that you would think was endogenous that came from within you as imagined, or if it was something that came to you, so to speak, from within the whole we are part of through like an impingement on your dissociative boundary, part of the consciousness that you're in, but it made its way into your boundary. So then you have the thought, which is interesting also because we think that that's how memory works. Memory has never been found stored in the brain as little files of little, they've never found memory in the brain. There was a
Right.
paper that came out a few years back that said science has finally found memory stored in brain. And then when you read it, it's not even what happened. What they were saying was that when somebody experienced something, when they reflected on it and thought of it again, that the neural firings and pathways seemed to mirror that which was represented from the original experience. So they didn't find memory. They found that when you relived the experience, when you thought about it metacognitively,
It re-represents
it
itself.
was represented in the same way through third-party instrumentation. And that's a whole other thing too, is that there's really no unconscious. You're conscious or you're not conscious, right? Conscious, unconscious means that there's no longer a beingness to it. You're not being anymore. But it gets confused with metaconscious, which is to be aware, right? To experience is to be conscious. To be metaconscious is to know that one experiences, right? And a real simple example of that is, you ever look down at your arm? You're doing something around the house, whatever, and like you're almost done, and you look down at your arm and you have a cut and it's bleeding,
Mhm.
and it's been there for like maybe an hour. You had no idea. You didn't do anything for the last hour. That's experiencing something, but not knowing that you experience. When you go under with anesthesia, that's the anesthesia blocks neural pathways so you don't form memories. But you wouldn't say you weren't conscious because you're experiencing. You're conscious. You're just not able to report back to yourself. You're not metaconscious.
Well, the part that he left out is when you cut yourself, right? And then once you notice, then it hurts. Then it hurts
Mhm.
Yeah.
because he wasn't aware of it before, so it didn't register, right? And like what he was saying about the re-representation and how it represents itself in the same manner. And I think that would be a good explanation for PTSD, because if you are re-representing a memory, but that feeling will come to you again because it's representing itself again and making you feel that way, and you metaconscious of it.
Right. And that kind of speaks to a possible explanation behind a lot of times when people have like Alzheimer's or dementia and they don't remember anything. And then within 24 to 48 hours of them passing, all this stuff comes back to them. It's called terminal lucidity.
Mm.
So that speaks to that if the brain were where these things were stored and they were wiped out, they wouldn't just suddenly reappear.
Yeah.
We have access to the memories and experiences we have, but they're not stored within our brain tissue and all that squishy stuff. That's not necessarily the case.
Right.
Could you go back to the terms terminal lucidity? I know what lucidity means and I know what terminal means, but in the context, can you re-explain that, please?
Yeah, terminal lucidity is a term they use for when somebody if they're having, let's say, like Alzheimer's, and they don't remember who people are, they don't remember things about their life, the stuff is gone. Within the time frame I may be iffy on, 24 to 40 hours, maybe within when they actually end up passing away, all those things that they couldn't remember, those things they couldn't speak to, the people they didn't recognize, all comes back to them. They have complete recall of all these things that were gone for however long amount of time up until that last, let's say, 24 to 48 hours, and then it's like it never left.
Wow.
That makes sense.
It's funny in regards to memory. I keep thinking of the phrase, there's two sides to every story, and then there's the truth.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Two different perspectives, two different things. You know, each one said, well, no, I remember you said this. Well, no, I remember you said that. But there's in the middle, there's what actually happened, you know?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
No, it's how we interpret and explain these things has a lot to do with it. And again, we're not saying we have the right approach. We just try not to invent things or lean on things that we have no access or no ability to support. Like, you may have one of these deep conversations with people, and there may be more things that you kind of believe are true, but you don't always bring those up, because if you bring up the stuff that you can't really support, it weakens your whole position for the stuff that you can make a valid or a coherent argument for.
For sure.
That's kind of where we are. Like, we don't think we have all the answers. There's probably more stuff than we can speak to, but the stuff that at least we feel like we can make a coherent stance on is the stuff that we'll speak to, right? Like, I was just seeing, so just as an example, like Christy said, when we die, we remember the last 7 minutes. That might be true, but when somebody dies, how is anybody knowing that they remembered the last 7 minutes? Because once they're dead, now communicating with the dead, okay, but it's linking things together a little bit, that, you know, to know that it's that person, and then and to be able to clock the last 7 minutes is what. So again, it's possible, but it's difficult to support, and that's a lot of what we try to speak to.
May I point out, there have been, at least I've heard of studies, I have not researched it enough myself, but I have heard of studies where, for example, we talk about past life recognition, and we talk about those kinds of things. And there are studies that I have heard of where children consciously remembered the last portion of their previous lifetime very vividly, down to the point of where they there was a study with a young boy, I believe, if I remember correctly, where the boy knew exactly where he lived. He knew the house, he knew where everything was in the house, and this was a young child. But I think there is a difference between remembering versus you died and then you remember you remember. I mean, you can remember how you die when I feel you can remember how you die when you pass away, but there's a difference between like being consciously aware of the last 7 minutes versus non-consciously aware.
Right, that's the
After that point.
metacognition I was talking about.
Right.
We may have a small difference maybe on where this goes. Maybe
I
not.
don't think so.
Okay, maybe good. I wasn't sure. So
It was about something else, but you think I'm saying something. But forget. We'll talk about this.
Yeah, but by all means, share where you're at.
No.
So
it's
so for me, based on what I already said, right? If reality is universal consciousness or a mind at large, and then we are individuated authors of those with a dissociative boundary, but not fundamentally separate from the whole, right? If you think in terms of those whirlpools, when somebody new is born, you have a new dissociation that is the formation, like the excitations of a new whirlpool. It is possible as other whirlpools dissolve back into the whole, reassimilate, and no longer exist as individuated shapes and forms, that some of what was part of that dissociation is circulating or re-released into the greater body or the mind at large. So when the new dissociation is impregnated, birthed, and then you have a new alter or one of us, that some of what was part of the mental collective, the mental contents of that previous dissociation, could get entangled into the emergence of the new one, which would be why sometimes a child like that would have memories of the airplanes and the fighter pilots and stuff. That one kid had like World War II or something memories and addresses to certain things. Those mental contents, which again speaks to the fact that they're not stored in the brain, because his brain wouldn't have those if it was. So he has access to these mental contents. And a lot of times they say as they grow older, that a lot of times they lose some of what they knew as a child. So those mental contents, I think, this is just part of my theoretical model. Part of an existence, that pilot or that person dies, and as they reassimilate gradually back into the collective, some of what was part of their little whirlpool that is now part of the collective gets entangled or included in the emergence of a new alter. So some of those things that are memories that aren't of his own, that he doesn't have any explanation for, has no business knowing, come from that dissolving of one, reemerging of another.
And I agree with that. The only thing that we were, well, that's, you know, that's where the conversations get heated. So this is what I agree 100% with that. What I am saying with that is that, and I don't know the answer, but why is it, if that is the way that it happens, that they only pick up of one particular lifetime? Right? Why isn't that they don't pick up?
That's a good point.
Right?
Okay.
Right? That's what I was trying to tell you. And maybe there is stories out there that they pick up more than one. I'm not sure. But for the ones that do pick up that one lifetime, why don't they have more? If it's, you see what I'm saying? Like, how does it connect?
You know, I think there could be a degradation within the memory through that whole process. You know, say you're in the 1600s, you pass, and then you're in the 1700s, and then you pass and you're in the 1800s. You know, there's a degradation of that throughout the process. You know what I mean? So your 1800 self is probably not likely to remember right off the bat the 1600 self because it's so far back, but the 1700 probably, because it's fresher and more closer connected to that, in at least in my opinion. Now that's how I see it.
So I want to speak to two things. First of all, that, and again, I'm not agreeing or disagreeing. I just want to point out the implications of what it is when we refer to things a certain way, right? When you say the you from the 16th century, you to 7th, so that's professing a continuation of a you.
Well,
like an
individual that makes a new individual, I suppose.
Right, that goes from vessel to vessel in a reincarnation. That's vessel with soul inhabiting it, kind of a thing. Again, maybe not what you're trying to say, but that's part of the implication. Where she and I was right, are not 100% on the same page with that. And again, it's in the question, because I don't disagree with what she's saying, but there's something in philosophy called question begging, which means that the answer or an answer is assumed in the question, right? So if I go, Chris, how exactly did you steal my wallet? Even though I'm asking for how, what is implied, embedded in that question is the fact that you did it, right? Mm-hmm. So when she says, how is it that they only have recollection of one past life? That assumes that we know that they only have recollection of one past life. So with memory not being stored in the brain, is it possible that other parts of other lives or dissociations are also in their mental contents, but they don't have access to those? Or maybe they do, and they think that they're their own thoughts, because it's not as foreign as something that they wouldn't know, like a World War II pilot name or a fighter jet model. So we don't know that they don't pull from more than one past life. But what we do see, I think, in most cases, that there seems to be a predominant category of from one person that maybe it draws from. But to be fair, that pilot and that plane that he flew, right, that he named his best friend, it was John Smith, and he flew in the F-16, and he flew on Tuesdays. Other people who were in this platoon had that same information.
Right.
So those mental contents could have come from other people, but maybe the name came from him because it was his best friend. So we're making assumptions, and I'm not saying she's wrong.
I'm not saying, but that's where I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, why is it that they only recall that one? That's the point.
Right.
Why is it that they only recall? Why aren't they? And I know you're gonna tell me the tissue, but the tissue is down here, and the other piece of tissue is on the other side of the body. But this is all coming from the same place,
Right.
right? So why is it that they only recollect one thing and not aware of the others?
Right. But
where from your body is in two different
my
places.
question to you is how do you know they only recollect from one place? Based on the example I just
Well,
gave.
Based on the stories that are documented out there. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but
about stories that we've heard.
But that's our interpretation that it all came from one person.
No, the child
I know.
only, so that's it. I'm not saying that the child is saying his recollections.
Right.
And then he's only recalling one. So let's say they have it all, but why is it that they're only aware of that one if it's all coming from the same place?
I understand what you're saying.
So that's all.
But my challenge to that is that there's no way to know that it's only coming from just that one. That's an inference.
What do you mean?
It's
coming from the whole.
The example she was referring to was I was telling her.
No, but why don't you answer that?
I am going to answer
the whole.
I am.
It's coming from the whole. From
right.
the whole.
I will
so
answer
if it's coming from the whole in that same body of whole,
I understand.
Why is it if they have others, which I'm not saying that they don't. Let's say that they do, but why is it that they only recall one? That particular child only recalled one.
Right. Right. So then let me answer that, and then let me explain the example so they know what you were talking about. What I'm saying to you is the information that they give that they should not have any business knowing is attributed to having been known by someone who previously lived, that one person. And what I'm telling you is unless that one person was the only person who knew that, then you can't say that information came from that one person just because that one person had that info. His other platoon members would have known some of the same details that guy who he claims to have the memories of also would have had.
Right.
So that information that the kid gave that was attributed to the one dead fighter pilot could have come from more than one person.
That's true.
We're creating a narrative that says it only comes from one. So when you ask how is it only from one person?
No, not from one person. Why they only recall a lifetime of one person? Why aren't they aware of the rest? So let's say, like you said,
all right,
that's what I'm saying.
I understand what you're saying, Bob.
That's what I'm saying.
So still, if somebody recalled my lifetime, but you and I went to Disney together, right? They could go, well, and it was all this other stuff about me, but maybe the Disney part came from you because you were there with me. But everything else was from me, so they think it's just. That's what I'm saying. Is but still don't know categories.
But they say names. They'll say the name, so then that narrows it down to one lifetime.
That other people could have still known. So the thing that she was referring to before was.
Because he doesn't quite understand.
When we were talking about this, I had told her, I said, if you had a piece of tape stuck to your arm and you had a piece of toilet tissue stuck to your heel, and then you saw the tape on your arm, like, what is that? That you're aware of. But you don't know about the toilet tissue on your foot, so that you're not aware of that. So you would think that wasn't part of.
That's what he was saying.
Your experience, even though it is. So it could have been attributed to the same person. But
yeah, but that's why I say it's in two parts of the body where this is memory, right? That comes from one collective consciousness. So if they get more than one, why are they aware of only that one lifetime and not recall the rest? That's all I'm saying.
I do have a small theory on it, but I don't have the proof behind it.
You don't need proof. You just need a coherent theory. You don't need proof.
The theory that I have behind this is sometimes when certain past lives pop up, it could, in theory, have something that connects into the current lifeline with different lessons or experiences that an individual is having that they didn't necessarily learn from that previous situation. And so either it's something that needs to be worked through and released, and it could be an emotional, mental, thought process, such as I'm afraid of spiders, as an example. I'm afraid of spiders and I don't know why I'm afraid of spiders. But then we go back into the previous lifetime and we can see, okay, you were bit by a spider at this specific point in time, and you died. Like, if that's something that we see within that, when we're looking at things from downloads of information that we're receiving. So one of the thought processes I have had is, in theory, if somebody is remembering something from a previous lifetime that was either traumatic or that was traumatic, that it could essentially have a connection to that, to where they may need to have some type of energetic healing or release in that, or there's something to be consciously in this lifetime aware of that perhaps you didn't as an individual pick up in the last one. But I also believe and think that we do have access to multiple lifetimes, but it's a matter of, I guess it's a matter of belief system and thought processes to how you would look at that. But I think that it can
Yeah.
be learned.
Yeah, in principle, what you're explaining, I don't disagree with. Where it gets into a little bit of tricky territory for me as an idealist is the presupposition that the you that is you, with all of your experiential states and all of the influence and things that make you who you are, um, exist exactly that same way when you shed this physical shell that you inhabit, and then that soul comes back multiple times to either learn. So perhaps as an alternate way to look at it, again, but I think what you're saying in principle, I think makes a lot of sense. But perhaps in that same idea that part of maybe this spear of spiders and having been bit and such, perhaps that happened to part of a set of mental contents that are grouped by association, what we call a cognitive neighborhood. Perhaps that was from a lifetime that some of who you are now experienced, or perhaps it was not any part of the mental contents of who you are now. And the same way that that person is remembering World War II details when they're 6, right, or 4, that those are part of things out in mind at large that become part of your dissociative whirlpool when you become a doing of nature. So that fear of spiders or those things you need to work out in this lifetime aren't because of the you went through that lifetimes ago. It's just part of your mental contents now that may or may not be connected to any part of who you are now. It's not impossible what you're saying.
Because because I understand what you're saying. So we think that when that happens, it gives us the feeling, the appearance that we had a past life, because that's what it feels like. But if you think about the soul and we pass away, if that stays, then we don't become part of the whole, because you're keeping the soul in its individual place, where we believe that the soul then becomes everything. So when you dissociate, if you pick up memories that are not yours because you're a child, no way possible, is because you picked up something extra from the consciousness. So when they have the memory, it appears like they had that lifetime because those memories are not theirs. Does that make kind of sense to you? Because if you do it the other way, then that means the soul never becomes part of the collective consciousness. You're keeping it in its own separate entity.
Yeah.
And we believe that you become everything. You become part of the whole. So when you dissociate again, you may pick up memories that are not yours, and however that happens, but it has, because there's experiences of it. And it gives us that impression, that feeling, that appearance that you've had a past life, because that's exactly how it feels like, because you've had these memories. And then if you research them, it's documented. You find things that's, oh yeah, that happened. That's this person, and the memories are correct. So it gives the appearance that we've had a past life, but it's just like you picked up extra from the collective consciousness. When that's my whole thing with him, that if that happens and we know that it does, why aren't we aware of the rest? But but I don't know if that makes sense to you. But
I think go ahead, Raven. Sorry.
I was just going to say, it's a very it's something I'll have to think about and maybe contemplate, because I have never looked at it from with the past lives. I've never looked at it as being disassociative from the full collective of energy. So I really would like to maybe do a little more spiritual research on that, and then see what I can come up with, and then bring up some thoughts to the both of you later on, because I would love to continue
oh yeah, this would be cool. Yeah, that'll be cool. Let me see what. Yeah.
Yeah, that's our goal ultimately is to provoke thought, not to say that here's how it's been figured out. Let us tell you,
Right.
two chuckleheads from New Jersey have solved the cosmos. No, that's not our platform. But yeah, it's something to think about. The key thing that would help me a lot that I learned from Dr. Bernardo Kastrup and the idealism is that when you say or put forth certain ideas, that by extension other things are implied, at least if you have consistency. If you don't have consistency, then there's another flaw in your theory or your idea right there. If it conflicts with science and what we know, then you have a conflict right there. But barring those two things being part of it, then that's part of why that's important that we like about the idealism is that there's a consistency to the position so that you have by extension, like when, again, with the interdimensional thing, when you say that they're going to a separate physical place, another alternate dimension, a parallel world, right? That's implying physicalism. So now if you invoke physicalism, which is a metaphysical view, you are stuck with everything it comes with. And then your theory starts to fall apart because if physicalism doesn't allow for certain things and it says this happens, not that. That's possible, that's not. That's the problem. It's like trying to be racist just on weekends, right? It's once you're in a position, you are committed to what that position is, if it's part of your explanation. So for us, this whole idealist thing makes sense. It allows for what we know from science. It doesn't conflict with it. It doesn't conflict with theurgy or theology. It doesn't conflict with spiritualism or things that spirituality says. So it speaks to a certain. It doesn't cover everything. Idealism is not a blanket panacea to cover all things and answer all questions. It's one part of it. I think every one of those components is important to entertain. The sciences, the philosophy, the spirituality, the theology, all those things offer stuff. Today, in this big push for credibility and validity, everybody's trying to cram everything in under the umbrellas of science and saying, oh, we're scientific and this is scientific and that's science. Everything does not. Science is one tool. It's a very valuable one, but it's not the only tool, right? You could always hammer a nail in with the butt end of a screwdriver, but wouldn't it be better to use the hammer? Because sometimes the right tool for the right job makes sense. And when we make everything try to cram in under science, we water it down and we dilute it. One of the things that gives any epistemology or any means of gathering knowledge or information, its strength, comes from what it can't speak to, the limitations, right? What science can't explain, what science can't speak to, is where it gains a lot of its strength. Because if you are operating or commercing outside of what those boundaries are, then you're not doing science. So it's important to know what those are. And there are limitations to certain things like that. Everything does not get explained by science. We can't even explain things all the same way. And we get that a lot. Oh, so you had this haunting thing happen. You captured a voice or you think you got an apparition, whatever. So let's take this into a lab and if we can recreate it, then fine. But if we can't, then it's probably misinterpretation, a mistake, a hoax, whatever. It's fake.
So we're going to send you some information about the dissociative state and that theory, because you probably won't remember exactly, so you won't really know what to research. And then I want to see what you research and come up with, because it'll be interesting to talk about it.
Just to provoke thought, like I said, like the perfect example, Chrissy just mentioned, and this is very popular, parallel universes, or alternate universes. So there's something that's widely known called the Evereshian many worlds interpretation, and every time every infinitesimal second, another universe pops into existence where the alternatives all play out. Every possibility plays out. That's the most inflationary theory known to humankind. Everything happens, and when you have a theory that allows for everything, you have a theory that explains nothing, because everything happens. So there's no boundaries. There's no this or that. It's just everything.
Because not all scientists agree with that. See, there's just two sides of it.
Right.
There's some, but there's more that believe something else. There's fewer that believe that there's an alternate, because it doesn't make sense. Like he says, if you allow for everything, then you're not. Then there's nothing there.
Right.
So Where can people find the both of you, and what events do you have that are coming up? And then if Chris has a final question, I want to make sure that I'm not cutting him off from that.
Yeah, no problem. So our website is Gonyac Paranormal, GONYAC. First three letters of her last name, first three of mine, Gonyac. Paranormal.com. From there, I have a Substack where I started putting up some metaphysical philosophy articles or notes that I started writing just to share some stuff.
Send me that link.
Okay. It's got I did a course. I had a course online for a while, and then I put it onto a free YouTube playlist now. There's a link on the top of our website that takes you to that, and it's got some of the metaphysical and paranormality stuff that we talk about in some of those videos. There's our calendars there for events that are coming up. Did you want to?
Yeah, because we have a lot of small events like investigation events. So it's a lot of them. I wasn't going to mention them, but you can go on the Gonyac paranormal website and you'll find those. But as far as Paracons, we have we'll be at Gettysburg, and then we're doing the New Orleans one. So Gettysburg is in July, then in July the 24th, that weekend, and then the following weekend we're in New Orleans, and then we're doing the main Paracon, we're doing the Underworld Paracon, we're doing Mass Paracon. So I mean, I think we're doing the New Jersey Paracon.
We think we're doing New Jersey again also.
I'm sorry, Chris, what?
I was just gonna say I will definitely see you at a few of those events.
Especially Maine. Yeah.
Yay!
That's cool. Yeah, that was a great event. Their year
I
one.
expect your research in the one. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Homework. No, just kidding.
Yeah.
So that'll be great. Those are going to be fun. We love doing the Paracon, so that'll be cool.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, it's a blast.
And letting us babble and go on about this stuff. Like I said, we hope the takeaway is thought provocation, not pontificating from some kind of authoritative platform here.
Do you usually stay this long? Because I'm like,
honestly, this has been so insightful and so much fun. I don't know about you, Chris, but I didn't even notice the time going by.
No, I've just been conversations like this are my jam. I love this shit. Like talking about this stuff and just like I said, thought provoking, right? Not coming from a place of authority or like this is finite, just talking about things and theories and thought processes and getting people's minds going is I love it. I absolutely love it.
That's
and then we get to see Gwen.
Yeah, 2 hours.
Right. One last thing, Lourdes, I just want to validate something for you, which I think I understand what you were talking about as far as the past life thing, right? You're talking about why don't we understand previous ones, right? So like if I was born in 84, so if I remembered my past life from World War II, let's say, why do I not remember when I was a shoemaker in London before that? Is that what you were talking about?
Well, yeah, but in a cosmic level. But yeah, you get what I'm saying. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
That was all. I just wanted to make sure I heard that correctly. So
yeah. Like, why are you aware? Like, why is it that it recalls just that piece and not the rest? If it's all in you, right? If you get
just
it all,
the World War II piece, not the shoemaker in London.
Why is that? Because then it makes it seem like the soul is individuated, and then when you receive it, you only. But it. Right. We don't believe that it is. We
not to open up that can of worms, Ron. I'm sorry, but
I'm already like, well, hold on now.
But you don't believe that it is. That's my point.
You can message me afterwards, and we can debate this some more. But
yeah. Start over. Let's go.
That's right. Yeah, we're
on the same page.
Round 2. Ding.
Most of the time,
right?
We've argued our way into realizing we agreed all along. But certain words may have led to confusion a little bit, but I mean, I'd rather have that. I mean, I'd rather have that than have her not paying attention to it or not considering it or diving into it 100%. Because we've helped each other understand stuff better by discussing it or hashing it out. And then, if I can't refute something or she can't refute something, then we have to step back and think for a minute and go, all right, well, hold on. How would I address that?
Yeah. Right.
So
we're at an impasse, right? Yeah.
That's how you're supposed to do. Not, oh, I'm right. No.
Well, right. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I said back there, I love you guys. I can't wait to see. I'm gonna be at a lot of the stuff you guys are at, so I'm excited.
Yay, it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah, we look forward. But thank you for having us. We were looking forward to this. We love all you guys. So this was for us a little extra time we got to spend, and hopefully it was, like I said,
Absolutely.
insightful or thought provoking.
100%.
Thank
I mean,
You
I
guys
think
wanna
last time I
hold
saw you
on
guys was
to
at
that
Wilson
for a minute?
Castle, and Ron and I were talking for quite a while at that one too. So
Yeah,
And this
dude. I remember though from the just not to prolong this, but from the main Paracon, we had people come in our digital seance room and get certain things that were personal to them. And there was one person I remember that said that they had gotten some of the same stuff from you, Chris,
Oh yeah.
before they came into us.
Yep.
And
Oh, wow.
we heard what they also heard and called it out. And then they were like, holy crap, this is crazy because that guy Chris inside said this, and that before I even came in here. So we had a lot of things that aligned with what you were telling people that day.
that's cool. That's really cool. That dual validation, like that's really really cool shit.
Hmm.
Yeah, absolutely is.
What were you saying, Gwen?
No, I was going to say that you guys can talk as long as you want to, but it has been almost 2.5 hours.
I know, right?
Oh wow.
She came to kick us out. Well,
Yes,
no.
You have to go home, but you can't stay here.
No, Glenn would never say that. I just didn't realize if you guys knew. I don't know what you have to do tomorrow. So
Believe me, I was looking at Ron. I was like, as if I was drunk, but I was like, it's almost midnight.
Time is an illusion.
It's true.
that's another conversation.
yeah. This is our first 4-hour episode, but hey, let's go for it.
All night.
But no, honestly, like, thank you guys just for the amazing conversation and just for being amazing, grounded, and amazing people. Yeah, exactly. Right here.
We
Yep.
love you. Thank you.
We had
so
a great
much.
time. We had a great time. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, we appreciate
Absolutely.
that.
Anytime on the whole network, you just let us know and we'll hook you up with somebody.
You always have. Yeah, and again, our website, Gonyak Paranormal. I also have 5 books. Number 6 is in the works on Amazon, and the link to those is also on our website. It takes it to the Amazon page. There's a link to that also.
Amazing. Awesome.
Perfect.
All right. Good night, guys. I love you.
Good night.
Good night.
All right, guys, take it
Love
out.
you both.
I'm gonna put you back. All right, close it out for me.
All
All
right.
right. That was an amazing conversation. I had a
Yeah,
blast.
Right?
Right?
I mean, fucking A, that was cool.
Yeah. Well, everyone, thank you so much for hanging out with us and putting your comments in. We appreciate you. Next week, Monday night, 9:30, and we'll see you then.
Peace,
All
guys.
right.